If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
Today we're going to bring you Dr. Hayley Randle. Hayley's been on before. She had a previous chat, I think number 164, and she was so popular we brought her back as a listener's choice and repeated that episode on number 408. So if you need to find out a little bit more about Hayley, go back, have a listen to those episodes, or just one of those episodes is all you need. From a personal point of view, she's got extraordinary organisational skills. She was the superstar organiser at the ISIS conference that was held in Australia, and she's a strong supporter of facilitating research into the training of horses to enhance horse welfare and to improve the horse-rider relationship. So I think she's absolutely perfect today to talk to us about horse welfare and contemporary issues of horse welfare. And we'll get started in a minute. I just want to have a quick chat to you, though, about International Horse College. So if you've got a vision to have a world where people safely appreciate, respect and enjoy their horses, and the horses appreciate, respect and enjoy their people, then we're talking to the right audience. Go to internationalhorsecollege.com now, registered training organisation 31352. Hayley, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Yep, all
Wonderful,
good. We're just gearing up, ready for teaching this session.
Good. Okay, so we're going to talk about assessing horse welfare, and it becomes a little more as, is your horse fat enough? But if you were going to define horse welfare, what would you say? What sort of a definition would you give?
Okay, so my definition is very much a practical one, and I would say something like it's an individual horse's ability to cope with its environment, which actually is based on quite an old-fashioned sort of original definition. But it's also their ability to experience a range of emotions, which may not necessarily just be the happy ones. Just it may not always be, all about the horse always being happy, but being able to experience a range of emotions and then subsequently learning how to deal with them, just like we are with children, I guess.
Yes, you can't have children happy all the time. They end up being pretty spoiled. Yeah. Now, we used to talk about the 5 freedoms, but there's been more progress recently regarding animal horse welfare. And, I want to say too that Hayley's giving us this information on evidence-based research. It's not just what she's come up with and what's most popular at the time when she's talking to her friends. This is actual evidence-based research and worldwide evidence-based research. So the progress recently regarding animal horse welfare, can you talk to us about that and what was the 5 freedoms? Yeah.
Of course. So originally the 5 freedoms came around as a result of a report that was commissioned back in 1965, which is just a little bit older than I am. And that resulted in the 5 freedoms, which were basically provisions. They were things that you had to provide for animals in order for them to be assessed as in good welfare, or, you, the owner, the person responsible, actually providing appropriately. So the 5 freedoms have been around for, I always say donkey's years, bad pun, but for a very long time.
Yep.
And they're still very, very much used today in the practical world. However, over the last 10 years or so, probably a little bit longer, there's been sort of a move to also consider things that kind of something called the 5 domains model. So this is where we're actually also trying to include how animals may be feeling about things, and also looking more explicitly about behaviour, but also the kind of the impact on the mental state of the animals. So that's always a problem area, because we all don't think we know what's going on in another human's head, never mind another animal's head.
Yeah.
I think it's really been a thing about a move from providing for the animal to actually assessing what the animal is receiving and how they're perceiving what they're receiving. So how they perceive the physical, but also how that feels.
Now, if we talked about the difference between resource and animal-based indicators of welfare in horses, how would you define that? What's the difference there?
Okay, so that's a good question. imagine to follow on, because resource-based really relates to 5 freedoms. So that's about, the animal has access to food, a nice soft place to lie, water, all of those sorts of things. Also including access to companions and so on, because they are a sort of an environmental resource. As the animal-based indicators are moving more on in the same way as the 5 domains into, sort of animal feelings, animal ability to express emotions and all of those sorts of things. So we're moving from what's provided to how it's received.
Okay.
In a nutshell.
Yes. The horse's mental state. Does that matter to welfare?
Yeah, I think, it's not just, as you said before, this is an evidence-based sort of discussion, but I think that does matter. If you look at the human literature, so not just knowing humans, but actually looking at the literature, that's been proven time and time again to be absolutely important to an individual's welfare. The short answer to that is yes. But obviously, the longer answer is yes, it does matter, but we need to have evidence that it matters, and then evidence of how the mental state can actually be assessed. So that we probably need to take a little bit of a step back and actually look at how that's been done in other species, because animals such as livestock species will have had a lot more research attention because there's funding more readily available, because it's livestock and it's a production sort of scenario.
Yeah.
So, it's like I say to my students, it's always worth looking at what's happening on in the dog research, the cow research, the human research, and then use that to inform how we may best research horses.
Okay, because we do use the anthropomorphism, don't we? We're thinking about horses and their mental state, so knowing that how and why is important.
Yeah, absolutely. It is really, really important, because one of the problems that we have with anthropomorphism is that we are all just born to do it all the time. And I find myself, I'm teaching our students, and then they'll ask me about the latest horse that I seem to have acquired, because there seem to be a number of them since I've been here. And I will give a description which I listen to myself and go, oh, that was very anthropomorphic. He's this, he's that. And so on. But then I'll follow that up and say, actually, what I really meant by that is, there's the and so on. But it's just our default. We can't help doing it. But the only problem is that when we do that too much, we start making assumptions, and then we start doing our research at a higher level than where we probably need to start. So making those assumptions can actually prevent us asking some of the proper sort of sensible questions that we need to ask.
Okay. And emotions in horses. Tell me, do horses show emotions?
Well, we think so. And that is like the royal we, as in researchers think so. It's really quite inconclusive at the moment, but there's quite a big body of research going on around facial expressions and looking at some very specific behaviours that horses do, and sort of things like looking at combinations of very specific behaviours, such as, the nose wrinkle coupled with an ear going in a certain direction and a certain sort of vocalisation or so on. It's really quite tentative, although there are there's some good publications out there, but as with every area that's quite new, for one publication we'll find one thing, another publication will find an opposing thing. So as sort of good scientists and good practitioners, we need to be aware there's a body of work emerging, but actually know when to take it and run with it, or when to take it and, just sort of really take a step back and look for signs and then see if they're repeatable. And then eventually you go on and you do bigger studies with different sorts of horses, different backgrounds, and so on.
We'll just have to stay updated with that one, I think, won't we?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Now, if we're measuring affective state in horses, tell us about the physiology, behaviour. It's confusing.
Well, yeah, it certainly it certainly can be. There's a number of reasons for that. So measuring affective state in any animal is still relatively new, and particularly in horses, as I said, because of kind of lack of lead opportunities. I have been involved in a project with some colleagues across the world where we've been actually looking at the literature around physiology and behaviour in horses. And what we find is that within the physiology area, so that's when we're looking at things like heart rate and sort of things like respiration, sweating, and all of those sort of physiological signs, that actually there are some findings. Quite often they are flawed in that the equipment used has either been validated, or maybe we've done something like we tend to do quite often. We grab some technology that's used on a different species, get all excited, apply it to a horse, and when the data have been analysed, it hasn't actually been turned into sort of set up for horses. It's still on human setting or something like that. So there's some flaws in basically what's been published. Not everything. It's just one or two. And the other thing is that with behaviour, there's been lots of conflicting results. Then, so as I said before, one study says A is the case, and then another study says B, and then another one says A, and another one says C, and so on. But we have to just have sort of better designed studies and replicate those studies more thoroughly. And then the other thing that happens, just to make it really complicated, is that studies that have shown there's a relationship between the two things, actually, that might not be the case. So it could be that the physiology is telling you, let's just say, for example, that the horse is happy, in inverted commas, and the behaviour tells you that the horse is not happy, in inverted commas. So whilst I think there's been some early studies where it's assumed if a heart rate is high, the horse is stressed, that may not always be the case. And equally, if you're looking at a horse that, and I find this quite hard not to be anthropomorphic now, because the classic example of this is I had two grey Arabs, both small, and they're not supposed to say that, and I did a little experiment, sample size of 2, which is not good, and put heart rates on them and took them for a ride, and one of them was all spooky, eyes out on stalks, really kind of jumping around all over the place. The other one behaved immaculately, really perfectly, didn't spook at the spin rolling around in the wind and all that sort of thing. And when I got them back, I took the heart rate monitors off, and they were completely the opposite.
Were they? Yeah.
So, the good old girl who was always very good and didn't show you any behavioural signs, her heart rate was through the roof. And the other guy who was all, whoa, look at me, his heart rate was about 50. So I know that's who's to say that the heart rate monitors weren't actually something called crosstalk, which is when you try and put too much equipment on at once, they conflict each other.
Yes.
And as we've discovered with students, when I've said to them, you don't have your mobile phone on you, do you? Because they can also interfere with data recording.
Okay.
So there's so many things to learn. And, so you can use physiology, you can use behaviour, but I think at the moment we still don't know enough to say this is definitely what's going on.
So because we all want our horses to be happy, are we any closer to knowing in a horse that they're happy?
I think that we probably are a tiny bit closer in that people seem to be much more aware of how we should be providing for horses.
Okay.
So that's just one aspect of it. But also I think the things like this work that's been going on around physiology and behaviour of affective state and so on, we're just at the very beginning, and I just feel like in a minute that's all going to explode. And there's going to be a lot more investment in that, particularly with now, obviously in Australia, we've had a big thing about the welfare of racehorses and so on. And I think that brings all of these questions to the force. There's much more interest, and that brings the slight probability of more funding. And also, it's becoming safer to say, I want to look at affective state or emotions in horses. People just don't laugh at you and chase you out the building. They'll actually go, okay, so how are you going to do that? So I think the kind of academic world is changing, and I think the people out on the ground are changing as well. And, there's this real thing around social license to operate as well, which I think is a really big driver. which will enable us to, actually, just to get back to the question, to being able to get closer to knowing if horses are happy or indeed unhappy.
Yeah. Now, Hayley, a slight change of direction. What do you think are the main issues faced by horses today?
Oh, that's an interesting one. There's a couple of things that actually have kind of bugged me, really, and I think they've been right to bug me. As I think I said on a previous thing, I've moved from the UK in 2016 over to Australia. I've been here ever since, and I would say my biggest thing at the moment is the use of rugs on horses.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm one of these people that gets very annoyed when I see horses in the winter with multiple rugs on. And here, and actually I've seen it everywhere, so I'm not just, being negative about Australian practice, but you do see a lot of horses in the summer wearing rugs. They're cotton rugs, but they are often referred to as either cool rugs or shade rugs. And I get really annoyed when manufacturers do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't make it any cooler for the horse, they don't improve the welfare, and they certainly don't improve shade.
Mm-hmm.
And I just get really annoyed because the people that are buying them are probably buying them because they want to do the best by their horse.
Well, we usually do, don't we? I mean, that's the whole thing. Yeah, we want to do the best by our horse. Yeah.
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah. So over-rugging is one of my things, and one of my other things that I think is beginning to sort of make some headway is about clipping off whiskers. Mm-hmm. Because as we know, the whisker is actually attached to the brain through lots of other bits.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't go around doing that to humans because it would be seen as unethical and, compromising the day-to-day quality of life and ability to do things. So why is it acceptable in a horse? And, if somebody went around and chopped the whiskers off their dogs, there would be an absolute hell put over it. So, that's my thing too. I don't go around just going, oh my God, that's a welfare issue, this is a welfare issue. But I just think that some things that if we just take a step back and think it through, and perhaps stop being governed by either the discipline or everybody around, that makes change really hard to happen. Mm-hmm. And I think we could make some progress.
Okay. So if we're talking about the equine quality of life, how could you explain that? And I suppose wrap everything above.
Yeah, it kind of is, isn't it? It's welfare. Now, what's really interesting is what we're seeing in industry now is a move away from the word welfare towards well-being.
Yes.
And I think part of that is because welfare has got a bit of a sort of a label. And if you mention welfare now, everybody's assumed that you're going to talk about bad welfare and impaired welfare and poor welfare, when actually you might be wanting to talk about good welfare and enhancing welfare. So well-being seems to be a better word to use, and I know there's lots of organisations who are moving over to that sort of welfare charities as such. So I think quality of life is about having access to all of those sources, the things we measure in the 5 domains. But I think it's also about being able to have, it's actually what they call in the 5 domains, they call it agency. So the animals, you can say humans, cats, dogs, whatever, are actually in the position of making a choice. So you can choose where you want to lie down. Do you want to be indoors or outdoors? And those sorts of things. Do you want to eat over there or do you want to eat that hay here? And making choices, because one of the biggest problems that we've had in terms of horse ownership, because we want to make everything so perfect for our horses, we've provided everything so they don't have to think about where to get food or where the water is or make any choices. So there's a whole bit of their brain that's just not being occupied, which could then, have an impact on kind of mental well-being, an effective state in that way, because if you're never getting to make choices, you're not learning that was a good choice or a bad choice.
Yes.
And, the emotions that come with that. So quality of life, I think, is another one of these great big sort of beyond a label thing, a big concept. And I think we're still unpicking what we mean by the different elements of that. But for me, it's about having access to all you need, but actually having to work through it a little bit.
Yes,
I think.
yes. And the fact that you've come back, that's what I find really exciting about this chat, Hayley, is that you've come back and said, well, we're in the process of, one study might say this, one might contradict, but we're working on it. We're putting all the pieces together, and, maybe there needs to be a bigger study in a certain area, but we're progressing. We're working on it. We're not just have these fixed ideas that someone came out with a century or two ago. The whole research, it's all evidence-based. It's coming on. We've just got to keep going with it. And, we're looking at the best outcome for the horse.
Yeah, and I think we also have to realise, I think we do realise, but we have to admit some of the news that we've explored about horse welfare may not have been the best ones, but they were the best ones at the time.
Yes.
So as long as we're always trying to move, my dad always says, onwards and upwards. So as long as we're trying to move, and even if you're making one step forward and two steps back, as long as you can pick yourself up and keep going.
Yep.
And equally, listen to the practitioners. Because I think, in the past, certainly since the International Society for Equitation Science has got going, there is a lot less, them and us academics bouncing forth to practitioners what they should do.
Yep.
I always say to my students, this is me, I've got horsehairs on me because I've been playing with my horses before coming to teach. I learned something today. Here it is. And just being completely down to earth and very much practitioner. And for me, certainly with my teaching, I'm not afraid to tell people when I've made a mistake, because not only hopefully do I learn from it, but they do too.
Yep.
So, I think that's the little welfare things as well as the big ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Now, Hayley, we are trying to bring in a challenge each time. It's great for people to listen to podcasts, get lots of knowledge and lots of education, but if they don't put it into practice, then it's not as much use. So as a challenge today, I'd like you to go to the equitationscience.com site and have a look at the 5 domains model and make sure that you're ticking all the boxes with your own horse care. I think that's very important.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And when you're doing that, it's not always just about how you have to optimise your time, because generally if you have to drive somewhere to do your horse, it's because you've got to be at work by a certain time. So if everything is all in one place, that's easier for you, but it might not be the best thing for the horse.
Yes.
So that's certainly one of the things that I changed when I used to do that back in the UK. So
Hayley, what's the best way for people to contact you if they need to ask you any questions or, more information about this? What's the best way? We've given them the equitationscience.com website. That's the International Society for Equitation Science.
Yeah, that's fine. Also, my email is another one. I'm always happy to email people, and even if I can't respond immediately because I'm about to go teaching or something, I will get back to people, and I don't mind being nagged if I haven't responded the first time. So,
not a problem.
Yeah. That's fine. You have my email, don't you?
We do, and that'll be on. If you go to horsechats.com, if you go horsechats.com/Hayley Randle 2, or just go horsechats.com and search for Hayley or search for Randle, and you'll find those details at the bottom of one of your chats. So you've got the 3 pages now, so those details should be at the bottom there. Yeah. Hayley, wonderful talking to you. Yeah, we sort of got it all together, and it's always good talking to you.
Well, I look forward to the next one.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, well, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Hayley. Bye.
Okay, bye.
If you've enjoyed this chat, then please comment, rate and subscribe. If you'd like any changes or recommendations for guests, then please contact us through horsechats.com. And while you're online, have a look at the government-accredited courses at internationalhorsecollege.com. Registered Training Organisation 31352.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.